Well, hello there, internets. This is Professor Golden with another episode of Nerd Out, where we get super nerdy and super into two pieces of DJ gear and give you all the details down to the screw of the equipment so you really understand what you're talking about when it comes time to decide which gear to buy. Today, we've got a shootout of two of the most popular and sturdy stands on the market, the crane stand and the UDG stand. Now there's a lot of ways to prop up your gear or your laptops, your controllers, but these two stands represent what is probably the best quality stands on the market. And many of you are probably wondering, since they share a similar price tag, which one is actually better and why are they different? No problem, we got you covered. In today's episode, we're going to go deeply into each of these products and show you the ins and outs of each one. Okay, so first let's talk big picture differences here. The main principles are as follows. The UDG Creator Stand has a telescoping height, so you can raise it up or down and rotate it, whereas the crane stand is fixed. You can kind of get a height adjustment by bending it forward or back, but it's really not the same. So this guy's basically got a fixed height with a flexible angle for your top plate. The other big difference here is in terms of design. This has a U-shaped design with two bottom supports, whereas this has a T-shaped design with one bottom support. This is going to be a big deal for you if you're wanting to put these underneath mixers. This guy's going to go underneath a mixer much better than him because the mixer will wobble a little bit on top of it. The UDG is also a little bit more stable because it's got more surface area on the bottom. Little basic physics lesson. This guy has less surface area and is therefore a little bit less stable. But in general, both stands are pretty stable and not likely to move around too much under heavy use. Next big difference. This stand has a particular kind of lower tray that slots in right here and can move around. It's fixed. So if you're going to plan on sticking this guy underneath a mixer, the mixer would go right here and your tray is pretty much worthless. It is really nice, however, that it just slots in and looks very professional and is really sturdy. The crane stand, on the other hand, has this pop-in tray right here, and this guy you can put in just about wherever you want. So you could get it up here, just under your laptop, hide a sound card right there, and still more or less have room for a mixer. So the next big difference is the materials in these two stands. The UDG Creator is a Teflon coated aluminum, which reportedly does show more signs of wear and holds up less in terms of these cranks with regular use. We haven't personally had any experience with that, but there have been some reports. The crane, on the other hand, their big thing is US made aircraft grade materials. Specifically, this is a steel milled piping with a anodized aircraft grade quality anodization process, which is very robust and is supposed to last literally a lifetime. So Crane backs that up with a lifetime guarantee. If the stand breaks, you have problems with it, supposedly you can return it for the lifetime of the stand. UDG also has a lifetime guarantee, but it's outside of normal wear and tear. That means if the thing should snap or break or not function according to manufacturer specifications, you can return it. But if the coating or the parts wear down with normal use, that would not be covered. So now let's get into the nuts and bolts of the stands and start to talk about some of the particulars. Now, one of the first things that we noticed are the hardware. So this hardware is hand milled and you can tell it. It looks great, it feels good, and in general, it's a lot easier to clamp down. These guys are aluminum pieces which feel a little bit lighter and sound a little bit more squeaky. They crank down just fine. You can get a nice, really tight seal with this lever style functionality. It's somewhat minor, but the crane stuff does feel just a little bit better. Same action on the bottom of each of the two stands. So now if we open up the stand and look at the interiors, we'll start to get into a little bit more of the substance of the differences between these two products. You can see that the construction style here is pretty simple. We've got some fairly standard looking hardware and aluminum tubing. So this is coming from the crane stand. This is a milled steel center rod, And supposedly, according to Crane, these guys are going to last a lot longer than cast aluminum, which is what these guys are. These are the kind of parts you do see come out of China, which is where the stand comes from. And these are the kind of parts that you will see come out of your local machine shop here, which is where the Crane stand comes out of. So again, the emphasis here should probably be better quality materials, more functionality. It's a little bit of the trade-off between these two products. Over on the UDG, a couple things you may want to look out for is that we actually have a large plastic housing here that operates the vertical lever. So this is going to crank down on this, and if we look inside of this unit, you'll actually see that there's not one, but two plastic parts. Not a big deal if you don't really crank down on it, but that part's plastic, that's what's grabbing the tube, and I think if you really use it a lot, there is a possibility that that might break down with time. This entire thing is aluminum here, so no chance of that thread stripping. Okay, finally we're down to the base of the stand, and here we'll just see the final manufacturing difference in terms of the style. You'll notice this guy's got a dual articulating leg, so you're just going to have to go ahead and set that guy up. Crane, of course, is one single piece, so less flopping around, a little bit easier to manage. In general, we found that the Crane is faster to set up. One crank there, a second crank there, and you're pretty much good. The UDG, because it does have the flexibility, requires a little bit more in terms of the setup time. Specifically, this articulating and also rising center pole requires a little bit of fiddling to get used to. You've got to really crank it down and then crank it down some more. In our personal experience, we found that setting it up like this and really rotating around the center axis was less used. Most of the time you're going to find yourself using the stand in a straightforward manner. The real benefit here, of course, is that you can set your angle to be exactly how you want it. Say your laptop has a nice viewing angle, and then raise and lower it based on what you want to actually have, rather than needing to play around with different angles to achieve the same thing. So folding these guys up, you're going to find that they're pretty much comparable. They're each 3.5 pounds in weight, so they're not too heavy while still being sturdy. You'll notice that those two legs are flopping around a little bit. Both pretty much occupy exactly the same space. You notice that compressed, the UDG actually is a little bit more shallow. So if you're super short on bag space, maybe that'll save you a few inches. It might be the difference between success or failure. Looks like we got a little center rod there floating out. And that's actually one of the things that I noticed about the UDG was that thanks to this piece and this piece, as I'm cranking it down, it tends to be a little bit, let's say squeaky. Super solid, but a little bit more squeaky, whereas the Crane stand was a little bit more stable sounding. Not that that should mean anything, but it was a subjective observation, certainly not to be considered scientific in any manner. So really, folks, it comes down to one thing and one thing only. Would you prefer the high-quality, American-made materials aspect of the Crane stand, which admittedly is quite nice, or would you like the greater flexibility and functionality of the UDG stand? One major factor that might go into your purchase decision is whether or not you plan on using this stand underneath or behind a mixer. With the Crane stand, you're going to find that the mixer's a little bit uneven. You can, if you're working at home, extend and put some bigger plastic tabs under here to stabilize the mixer. That's probably not realistic for DJs on the go. You'll also want to really stick this thing far back, so it's going to limit the how far you can go up or down. That's not as good as the UDG, which fits very nicely underneath a mixer, of course giving a nice stable platform. Then of course if you want to bring the stand up or down, you can, or maybe even get it out of the way there. So a little bit more flexibility for those of you who want to use the stand under a mixer. However, for everyone using it off the side, probably not as big of a deal, except for one case. With the Crane, if you've got this off the side, it's really easy to set up, say, the UDG underneath your Technics 1200 turntables, but then rotate it towards you so you can see the laptop. That's really nice from a functionality standpoint. Crane you could also tilt by just rotating it, but it's not going to be quite as straightforward. Maybe you don't have as much depth on the desk. So, hard decision to make. Here at the office, our opinion is basically this. We like the action of the crane a little bit better. The materials feel good, the quality is definitely there, and we like the way it cranks down. It's easier to set up. The UDG, on the other hand, has really great flexibility and allows it to be put into a lot of different environments. One thing that may or may not sway you is that the UDG does come with a nice little bag. Protect it from other things, or probably more aptly, protect other things in your DJ bag from the steel and the sharp edges. So thanks for joining us on this extended nerd out session with two fantastic stands. I hope this helps you make a educated and well-informed purchasing decision. If there's a product you'd like me to nerd out on, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to dive in. Okay, now for this section we are going to perform some very scientifically controlled tests in which we will precisely evaluate the material differences between the two products. In this first test, we will see how good the stands are at withstanding the average amount of controller beating. Pretty good. We detected approximately 75.7% of stand moving during that performance. Now, moving on to the crane. Very interesting. If you yourselves happen to notice any distinct difference between the two stands, please let us know in the comments, because I have no idea and we're not actually scientists. Now, in our next scientific test, we will simulate the very important and likely event that a person from the crowd hurls a large bottle of water or beer at you because you're playing terrible music. Will your laptop stand up to the test, or will it tip over? We will see shortly. Well done. It passed.